Good day, everyone. You are welcome to this week's Business and Investment Tips program, a production of RCCG Christ Church Radio with Ayodeji Ebo, an investment professional. This week, the focus is on Nigeria's 2023 budget performance as of July 2023. The federal government of Nigeria recently published its medium-term expenditure framework, MTEF, and fiscal strategy paper, FSP, for 2024 to 2026, which included the 2023 budget performance as of July 2023, that is, for 7 months. The budget implementation report enables us to assess how the federal government is performing relative to its prorated 7 months of 2023 budget. The report shows that the federal government's retained revenue stood at 5.2 trillion naira, approximately 81% of the prorated budget of 6.4 trillion naira. A further breakdown shows that oil revenue underperformed by 37%, or 487 billion naira to 814 billion naira, accounting for 15.7% of total actual revenue. However, non-oil tax revenue came in at 1.8 trillion naira, 28% above the prorated budget for 2023. Similarly, corporate income tax and value-added tax collections came in impressive with 1.2 trillion naira and 234 billion naira respectively, representing 212% and 105% of their respective budgets. However, actual independent revenue, mostly transfers from government-owned enterprises and ministry departments and agencies, underperformed by 56%, or 810 billion naira to 1 trillion. On the other hand, the federal government's aggregate expenditure closed at 8.6 trillion naira as of July 2023, 4.6 trillion naira lower than the prorated budget of 13.2 trillion naira. Further review shows that non-debt expenditure accounts for 38%, or 3.3 trillion naira of the total expenditure, 1.6 trillion naira lower than projected expenditures as of July 2023. Personnel costs account for 27%, or 2.3 trillion naira of the total expenditure. Debt service accounts for 45%, or 3.9 trillion naira of the total actual expenditure within the period under review. The debt service included 1.7 trillion as interest on ways and means, that is CBN lending to the federal government, as against the prorated budget of 700 billion naira. Aggregate capital expenditure performed woefully with 22% achievement, or 3.1 trillion naira variance, to settle at 854 billion naira relative to the prorated budget of 3.9 trillion naira. The actual budget deficit stood at 3.4 trillion naira as of July 2023, based on total actual revenue of 5.2 trillion naira relative to total actual expenditure of 8.6 trillion naira. Our thought on the budget performance. 1. The poor performance in oil revenue can be attributed to low oil production within the period at 1.27 million barrels per day less condensate as a result of oil theft and lack of investment in the oil and gas sector. Oil production rose to 1.35 million barrels per day in September 2023, which should support improved revenue for the rest of the year. The adjustment in the official exchange rate will also boost oil revenue in naira terms. 2. The corporate income tax and value-added tax increased due to improved collection mechanism and not necessarily due to higher business activities, as companies are struggling to survive the harsh business environment and the plunging exchange rate. 3. While the federal government's independent revenue has improved year on year, the performance remains poor due to leakages and weak collection mechanism within the government-owned enterprises and ministries, departments, and agencies. However, the federal government should be mindful not to turn MDAs to overly profit-oriented centers, as their primary focus should be policy formulation and implementation. 4. The total expenditure shows that the federal government spent less than projected due to weaker than expected revenue. Capital expenditure suffered in terms of performance as debt service exceeded the budget. Personnel cost is expected to increase total expenditure for the rest of the year due to the rise in workers' salaries as announced by the President on the 1st of October 2023. Actual debt service as a proportion of actual revenue as of July 2023 stood at 75%. This implies that out of every 100 naira revenue earned, 75 naira is used for debt service. This leaves a huge gap to meet obligations like non-debt recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure. 6. 6. Due to the recent securitization of the CBN's ways and means, the federal government is obliged to make payments compared to underpayments in the past. 7. Due to the gap between revenue and expenditure, we expect significant borrowing towards the end of the year, which will lead to higher interest rates in the federal government bond market. 8. The federal government needs to explore other options beyond debt to fund expenditure like selling moribund assets and reducing stake in performing assets. Thank you for listening. Please join us same time next week for another exciting and interesting session. For questions, comments, and feedback, kindly forward to ebo.ayodeji@gmail.com or send SMS to 070-8246-3747. Stay blessed.